All right, guess we're ready. Seems to have strangely stopped the music. Anyway, all right. So, to completely reload a page. All right, shift refresh. All right. What do you do to make HTTP readable? All right, get rid of accept encoding. All right. So why do web apps send data to the user and then expect the user to send it back? This is ultimately the fundamental problem with cookies, that HTTP is stateless. It was never intended to remember who you are from one request to the next. And this is the original Mozilla solution, was to add this cookie to every request that reminds it who you are, so it knows what to show you. But it did start this whole thing of sending data to the client and then having it come back to the server over and over and over, which made it possible to have logged in sessions on the web, but it turned out to be not very secure. Anyway, all right, which one is easy for the end user to modify without using Burke? Okay, that's the parameters, you're just sitting there, so they're easily modified. All right, Bob. All right, Matt will have to tell me who they are. And Zoe sounds like a real name. All right, so let's just start. And let me see if I missed any chat messages. Well, I don't even know where the chat messages are. I guess I'm not going to look at them. They're gone. There it is. Okay, good. Okay, good. All right, anyway, so let's go back here. And there's not that much left because I cut a whole lot of the rest of this out because it was all about ridiculous stuff like Flash. So there were these extensions, Flash and client-side Java, and for a while Silverlight, which was Microsoft's pathetic attempt to compete with Flash. And these things would be additional features added to your browser, which would then run precompiled code to make it faster on the server. And of course, they're still coming down and can be modified. So you can have online gambling. By the way, there's a ton of cheating in online gambling. There are all these exploits to see the other person's cards or change the random number generator. And a lot of the online gambling websites, in fact, the server cheats and rips you off, just like the real casinos do by having a house edge. You know, it kind of makes no sense to trust an online gambling thing. Obviously, they could modify it so you don't win as much as you think you should. Yeah.
The ones that actually play for money, you can hack those?
Of course, you can hack them. You can cheat, and the server can cheat. And the server certainly has an advantage of cheating. They can just spin the wheel and make it not pick your number, even though you have some chance of picking your number, that sort of thing. It's surprising that anybody trusts online gambling, but they do.
Oh, I know the server side cheats the crap out of the people, but I didn't.
There are also hacks. Yeah, there are hacks where you can like read the person's card and stuff like that. So, yeah, as you imagine, anything else. So anyway, you can sometimes find hidden parameters, get information about other players. Anyway, there was Java applets, Flash, and Silverlight, and all these had partially compiled code down to something called bytecode, which they then send down, which runs in a local machine. Anyway, Java applets ran in a local Java virtual machine, and the reason why I talk about them is that this is still popular in Android. So you create these things called Java serialized objects. which is like a list of parameters in some blob of data. And there is this thing in Burp called GSer. This is what Java serialized stuff looks like. It's just a blob of binary junk, and Burp will take it apart and then show you what it is. It's just a way of encoding that data. It's not encryption, it's just encoding it into a blob of data. So anyway, there were serialization unpackers you could use, which you would then let you see what had been sent in these blobs. Now the thing, this doesn't really happen in browsers anymore, now that we don't have these extensions, but it's totally what happens in Android phones, and we're doing it in the mobile device hacking class. So your phone gets an app, which is an APK file. You take it apart with the APK tool, and then you see all the files and folders. And these things are in a language called Smalley, which is Java bytecode. It is partially compiled code, not down to machine language for a processor, but down to the language for a virtual machine, which is a Java virtual machine. And so the original Java looks like this: public int perform logon and things like strings and parameters put. And this is the Smalley, which is really very much like the original Java. This is the partially compiled stuff that runs in a Java virtual machine. And the point of this is you do not need to know the hardware underneath. This could be running on ARM or x86. It could be running on Linux or Windows or the Mac. And you don't care. You write it in Java, you compile it to bytecode, and it will run on any platform. And that feature means that your company saves so much money because you do not need to write a Windows version and a Mac version of your software. You just write a Java version and it runs equally badly on every platform. And that is so popular that I say #1 language for developers is Java. That is the most highly paid language. For big companies, write all their stuff in Java for this reason. And Java is really hard to write and really hard to use, but it's what all the big people use because it saves them money at scale. Anyway, so you can modify this Smalley code right here. You can add code. We're doing it in the mobile hacking class. You can recompact and re-sign the app, and then add extra code like it'll steal your credit card number and send it to the log. If you were better at Smalley, you could be sending it off to a remote server, make a Trojan app. And this is because they did not bother to put any integrity verification in the Bank of America app. The app could easily check to see if it had been modified before it runs. And the National Football League's app does that. If you modify the NFL app, it won't run. It will just say, your app is out of date. You must update to the real app before you proceed. But the banks just don't bother. Another thing they could do is they could make it harder to find these fields. If you look at the fields here, this field was just called set CVV, and that one's called set card number. And this thing is called user verification details. So there's clearly readable strings telling me where the credit card number is, where the password is. You don't have to do that. You could obfuscate them. You could make all the letters random. That's called obfuscation. Now here is the Progressive Insurance app. No obfuscation at all. Everything is totally readable. Over here you've got stuff, Android that came from Google. Then you've got Google, something called Moxie, Soft, PayPal, Progressive, Phone Valley. Different companies have written libraries and you've thrown it together. The bottom container is the code written by Progressive, and all of them are clearly readable. So they did not obfuscate anything. Bank of America did run it through a free obfuscator that Google gives you called ProGuard, which does this. You see, it changes a bunch of things, just AAA, A, B, C, D. A bunch of those names are not descriptive anymore, but a lot of them still are. I can still see Nucleus and HTTP and game.bofa.gamification and Green Robot and Butter Knife. So the ProGuard obfuscator only obfuscates about 2/3 of the labels, and I can still find credit card, password, secret, and all that jazz in there. So it doesn't actually do anything.
So have you tried any other banking apps besides Bank of America?
Oh yes, and they're all like this. They don't obfuscate any of them, and they don't do integrity verification for any of them. They don't even do jailbreak detection for any of them or root detection.
And this is for Android?
Yes.
Versions of the app? Have you tried the iOS version?
In iOS, you can't do this as easily. In iOS, apps are native, and they are compiled down to real assembly code. So the strings are often gone and stuff. So you can't do this kind of modification. And also, you can't put anything on an iPhone that wasn't signed by Apple unless you jailbreak it. So you can do it for testing, but you can't trick other people into loading an altered version of an app. You have to get it in the Apple Store to be signed by Apple. So this particular attack where you modify code and distribute a modified app is less effective on Apple. There is one version of it though. When the first bank app that came out, I think for Android, was fake. People called the company and said, I'm using your app. And they said, we don't have an app. But somebody sent an app in the store with their name on it. And people were using it and it wasn't a real app. This happened to Spirit Airlines. I was testing airline apps a few years back and I found the Spirit Airlines app and it was awful. So I submitted a vulnerability report and they said, we don't have an app. And I'm like, well, dude, somebody wrote an app with your name on it that connects to your server and it sends it all up without encryption. And it looks pretty terrible too. But you know, that's why people buy domain names. You should buy every version of your domain name, even if you're not using it, or else somebody else will buy it and put up a fake website that looks like your business but isn't.
That's one way to make money.
Yeah, they call it domain name squatting. You can buy a domain name like bankofamerica.biz and then put up some insulting website like pornography or something and then tell them for $1 million they'll sell it to you. You put something really annoying that will irritate them until they pay whatever it costs for you to let go of it.
You gotta have time to do that, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, that's right. Criminals have a lot of time to think these things up. Anyway, so if you do get client-side data, you have to be careful. Don't believe any critical data like prices from the client. Just have the client sending up a product ID and then look up the price on the server, that sort of thing. If you do want to bounce data off the client, you should be signing it or encrypting it so that the client can't easily read it or modify it. Remember, everything the client does cannot be trusted. Anything you do on the client is just for the convenience of the user. It's not for any security purpose. The only thing you can trust is what happens on the server. So you should have intrusion detection defenses to show you if somebody in the client is sending stuff. Like if you have JavaScript validation said the field will never be bigger than 5, if something comes in bigger than 5, you ought to flag that and block that IP address and say, this guy is obviously an evil hacker. They're obviously not really using my code. Obviously they're up to no good. You know, you could use this to warn you who the bad guys are and block them or throw them to a tar pit or a sandbox to waste their time. That's recommended frequently in your book, very rarely done, but that's what Bro does. Bro is the intrusion detection system that notices when people attack, and if you get like 10 attacks in a minute from somebody, it just blocks their IP address for half an hour. They can't reach you anymore. And they say this turns out to be very effective. I was just reading Super Pumped, which is fantastic. And Super Pumped is the rise of Uber. And Uber tried to expand into China. And they had a huge problem because fraud is incredibly rampant in China. And so what people would do is they would get like 100 iPhones and stick them in a car and then make take 10 iPhones and make 10 ride requests and then pretend they picked up these 100 people and drive around and collect all the fares as the driver. So a huge amount, like millions of dollars a week were being stolen by scams like this. So what Uber did was they found the IMEI number of every phone. And every phone that was used in a fraudulent ride, they would cancel their IMEI number so they could never use that phone again. Because what the criminals would do is they would just factory reset the phone and then use it again tomorrow with a new account to pretend to be a new rider or driver. But Uber identified the IMEI number, the unique number of the phone, and would just block it so they couldn't use that phone again. But in 2012, Apple changed their policy so apps can no longer see the IMEI number because it was a privacy violation. And then Uber was going to lose millions of dollars a week because of this, because now the bad guys could just reset their phone. So Uber got a pirate app that broke through Apple's security and stole the IMEI number again. And they ran it even knowing that this was such an offensive Apple's violation that if Apple found out, they could get kicked out of the App Store and that would ruin their whole business. And it's another huge thing. The App Store is like the ruler of the world. Many businesses like Uber and Lyft absolutely depend on the App Store, and yet you have no right to go in there. Apple can just change the rules on you at any time to where your app doesn't work, some important feature is gone. They can just kick you out of the store for no reason, and your whole business depends on being in the store. Many, many people, the same thing with YouTube. A bunch of people make their living off a YouTube channel, but at any moment, Google can just kick you off and ban you and throw them all away, and you can't do anything about it. People try suing and stuff, but you don't have any rights. They didn't sign a contract. It's a free service. You didn't pay for it. A bunch of people are screaming and yelling that like someone complained about my channel, but it was unjust. And they don't even talk to you. You can't reach a human. They just say, get lost. It was a free service. Make a new account. We don't care. This is not a good thing to build a business on quicksand. It could come out from under you, but that's where everybody is in the world of Apple. If you want to make money writing apps, you have to be an Apple, and you're totally at the mercy of Apple. Anyway, that's where we're at. It's a strange place to be. Anyway, I've got another set of cahoots here. So it is 6 or 5B. There we are.
Capitalism at its best.
Well, actually, probably not. This is Elizabeth Warren's point. This is monopoly. What they ought to do is break up Apple and say you're not allowed to have this kind of stranglehold over the market where nobody can make any money except from you. There ought to be forced to split into a few competing companies. There ought to be a Microsoft store or something where you can actually make money, or an Android store where you can actually make money. In the logical, that was the point of capitalism. There shouldn't be just one store that controls everything. What's that? Yeah, that's the communist solution, where you actually don't have a greedy, rapacious person running the company. That's un-American. Yeah, communism. Yeah, communism. This is Bernie. Bernie's the socialist. That's what he wants. Elizabeth Warren wants to break her up with antitrust. I know you're right. Yeah, technically, you're right. Anyway, these are what we're debating these days. What we have now is monopolies, bigger and bigger monopolies. The current Republicans love monopolies. They let them merge all the news companies, all the media companies, all the telephone companies into giant ones, and they like monopolies.
Just look at this.
Yeah, but
why does Warren want to break up the tax? Just break up AT&T.
Warren wants to break all these up because that was her whole cause. She made the yeah. Well, she wants to break them up. She doesn't like monopolies, and there are laws available to break them up, but they're not being used yet. She would use them. Anyway, we may see some of this happen if the Democrats win next time.
Who do you think is going to win?
Trump?
Well, of course. But,
I think Trump is most likely to win.
But what about no?
I don't know.
We'll get some.
I don't know. I don't think it matters who goes against him. I think the world is just people who love Trump and people who hate Trump, and I don't think anybody cares which flavor of Democrat. Compared to their burning hatred for Trump, all the Democrats look about the same. They're not, but they're all equally not Trump, and that's all most people care about. I think the entire thing is Trump or not Trump. I think only a small number of voters care about anything except that.
But there are still people lining up in the ring to see Trump.
There are a lot of people love Trump and they really want him, and a lot of people hate him and they want anybody else. But I don't think anybody much cares who else. It could be Bloomberg or Biden or Warren or anybody. Yep, they may not, but I mean, I think this next election is 100% a referendum on Trump. Do we love Trump or hate Trump? That is the only issue we're voting on. Anyway. I'll give it a few more seconds.
Maybe the Ponzi scheme or something. Maybe I can't think of the word right now.
All right, well, let's try some of these. There's only 3 of these. All right. So, which technology was killed by Apple? That's Flash. Flash died because Apple refused to support it. All right. Which technology is not compiled to bytecode? That's HTML is the only one. All the rest are compiled down to bytecode and run in an agent that runs that bytecode. All right, how do you make data from the client become trustworthy? You sign it. That's the point of signing. Signed things are very trustworthy, like signed updates and signed code. That's the point of it. Now, putting in a cookie or serializing it does not necessarily make it trustworthy, but signing it does mean you can detect an alteration as long as you use a reasonably strong signature scheme. And those are available. So, Gary Lynn. And Zoe again, good. And Ken Tan, that's another real name, good.
No, don't give Ken his points.
Yeah, he's getting his points, but it's still May. I never found out who May is, so someone is leaving points on the table. They may not care. I'm going to see if there's a chat message. Perhaps it's going to tell me who May is. Nope. Oh, you're May. Okay, good. All right. I now have the name for May. Let me throw it down here. Okay, good. And the big corporations could successfully litigate to defeat domain squatters. Well, they could try, but I think cybersecurity legislation is extremely slow in America. There's huge obstructions. And I think what happens is as soon as you probably propose any cybersecurity legislation, it immediately gets involved with internet voting and it hits a gigantic roadblock because the Republicans want to say that the Russians did not meddle in the election and Democrats want to say they do. So you end up hitting the third rail. You can be talking about something else, but as it passes through the political system, it will hit one of those two hot buttons and somebody will jump on it. That's why everything is frozen. Everything.
Company is successful in kicking squatters out after they sue them, and then of course they.
Oh, okay. You can sue them.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought if I buy a domain like apple.biz, I don't think it's illegal for me to have that.
It's not illegal, but the company effectively would sue.
You can't sue me if I didn't break the law.
No, the cost you don't have a business.
If you find a case like that, I'd like you to send me an article. I'd like to see that because I mean, I don't see how I'd be breaking the law. Anyway, you can't. I don't know. My feeling is you can't sue for domains, but I would like, if there's a case, if I was to buy like google.info and put up a fake copy of Google, they could punish me. But if I put up something else, like a porn site on google.info, I think that would be legal and they couldn't force me not to. Oh, the link. Let's see what this is. Cybersquatting. What can be done? Oh, good. Let's see. These guys think what can be done about it. This is very interesting. If someone's squatting, if you own a trademark, and if it's a trademark, okay, you can try that. You might be able to do it. Sue under the provision of the Anti-Cybersquatting Consumer Protection Act. Oh, well, this is good. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll add this to my news links. They did pass a law. Neat. I'm adding it to my news links. I didn't.
I'm about to go make some money right now.
I didn't know. Well, I didn't know about that law. That's cool. Okay. Neat. Exactly what I've been told, but it's never been used. Okay. Well, there is a law anyway. There may not be a case, but at least there's a law. And that's more than I thought. Well, good. I'm glad to hear it because it is a big issue. What's this Nissan.com? That's the company. Oh, isn't it the company? Nissan Motors lawsuit against us. Oh. Well, I can see why they'd have a lawsuit. I thought this was Nissan. Oh, this is interesting. Well, I appreciate these tips, folks. Nissan Computer Corporation. I bet they're being sued. That's not what I expected. Nissan doesn't own Nissan.com. Now that's annoying. Wow. Okay. People's opinions, many, many pages of opinions. Okay. Anyway, good. Thank you. Any other comments? I'm going to stop the recording and I'll leave the interesting. Well, I've not been sued yet. Yeah, I know, but I learned something I didn't know about. I didn't know there was any